The silence in my apartment felt different that Tuesday evening. Not the comfortable quiet of a home waiting for its owner, but something thicker, more charged. I'd returned from my conference in Chicago a day early, eager to surprise Alina with the vintage wine I'd found at a small shop near my hotel. We'd been together for 4 years, living together for 2, and I thought she'd appreciate the gesture. The first thing I noticed was the music, soft jazz playing from our bedroom, which was odd because Alina usually preferred pop when she was alone. The second thing I noticed was the unfamiliar cologne hanging in the air, mixing with her favorite vanilla perfume in a way that made my stomach clench. I set the wine bottle on the kitchen counter and walked slowly toward our bedroom, each step feeling heavier than the last. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, I could see movement, shadows, dancing against the wall in a rhythm that told me everything. I needed to know, but I didn't burst in. I didn't scream or shout. Instead, I stood there for a moment, watching the woman I loved with the man I'd considered my closest friend since college, David, who'd been my best man at every major life event I could imagine having. David, who I'd lent money to when his startup was failing. David, who'd eaten dinner at this very table just last week, looking me in the eye and asking how things were going with Elena. They were so absorbed in each other that they didn't notice me. Elena's laugh, that musical sound, I'd fallen in love with, was now directed at him, and the intimacy in it cut deeper than any knife could have. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake. The way they moved together, the comfortable familiarity between them, told me this had been happening for a while. I backed away quietly, my mind strangely calm. In the kitchen, I picked up the wine bottle and walked to my car. I drove to a hotel, across town, and checked in, not because I couldn't face them, but because I needed time to think. Really think. That night, lying in an unfamiliar bed, I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, that would come later. This was something else entirely. A clarity I'd never experienced before. Alina and David had made their choice, and now I was going to make mine. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day making phone calls and sending emails. I was meticulous, methodical. Every conversation I had was recorded with the proper consent disclaimers. Every document I requested was saved in multiple locations. I wasn't planning to destroy them. I was planning something far more elegant. When I finally returned to the apartment that evening, Alina greeted me with her usual kiss, asking about my trip with apparent genuine interest. David texted me later that night, asking if I wanted to grab drinks on Friday. Both of them played their parts perfectly, and I played mine just as well. For the next 3 weeks, I became the model boyfriend. I brought Alina flowers, planned romantic dinners, even suggested we look at engagement rings together. She seemed delighted by the attention, though I caught her checking her phone more frequently than usual. David and I maintained our friendship. Routine basketball on Wednesdays, occasional beers after work, the usual banter about sports and politics. But beneath the surface, I was orchestrating something beautiful. You see, Alina worked as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized firm. Downtown, a job she'd gotten through a connection I'd made for her. She was proud of her independence, always insisting on splitting bills and maintaining her own career. What she didn't know was that her boss, Margaret, and I had developed a friendship over the years through various company events. Margaret had always appreciated my insights into Elena's character, often asking my opinion on projects she was considering Alina for. David, meanwhile, had finally gotten his consulting business off the ground after years of false starts. He'd landed a major client recently, a family-owned restaurant chain looking to expand their digital presence. What David didn't know was that the restaurant chain's owner, Vincent Romano, was my uncle by marriage. Uncle Ving had always liked me, ever since I'd helped him navigate some complicated tax issues a few years back. The plan I crafted was elegant in its simplicity. I wasn't going to expose Alina and David's affair directly. Instead, I was going to give them exactly what they wanted each other, but under circumstances that would make them question every choice they'd ever made. I'd been having coffee with Margaret, ostensibly to discuss a surprise party for Elena's upcoming promotion. During our conversation, I casually mentioned that Elena had been acting strangely lately, staying out late, being secretive about her whereabouts. I'm probably being paranoid, I said, stirring my coffee thoughtfully. but I found some hotel receipts in her purse when I was looking for gum. Room service charges for 2 people. She said she was at her sister's place in Philadelphia. Those nights, Margaret frowned. That does seem odd. You know, we've had some issues with employees having inappropriate relationships recently. It affects productivity, creates drama. If Alina is involved in something that could reflect poorly on the company, I shrugged. I'm sure it's nothing. Elena's always been professional. The seed was planted. 2 days later, I had lunch with Uncle Vin. We talked about family, business, the usual topics. Then I brought up David's work with his restaurant chain. He's doing great work for you, I said, though I have to admit, I'm a little concerned about him lately. He's been acting erratically, making some questionable decisions in his personal life. I hope it doesn't affect his professional judgment. Uncle Vin raised an eyebrow. What kind of questionable decisions? Well, he's been having an affair with someone he shouldn't be, someone in a relationship. It's been going on for months. I worry about his integrity, you know? If someone can lie so easily to people they claim to care about, what does that say about their business ethics? Uncle Vin nodded slowly. Integrity is everything in business, especially in family business. Thanks for the heads up. Another seed planted. The third part of my plan required more patience. I started keeping a detailed journal, documenting every lie Alina told me, every suspicious text message, every time she claimed to be somewhere she wasn't. I installed a legal monitoring app on our shared iPad, one that Alina frequently used for work. Everything was above board, the device was registered to me, and I made sure to follow all applicable privacy laws. What I discovered was both heartbreaking and infuriating. Alina and David had been carrying on their affair for 8 months. They had standing reservations at a boutique hotel downtown. They'd taken weekend trips together while Alina told me she was visiting her mother. They'd even discussed moving in together, laughing about how clueless I was, but the most damaging evidence came from their text conversations about work. Alina had been sharing confidential client information with David, hoping he could poach some accounts for his own business. David, meanwhile, had been inflating his expenses on Uncle Vin's account, using the extra money to pay for his hotel trysts with Alina. 3 months after I'd discovered their affair, everything was ready. On a Tuesday morning, I called Alina at work and told her I had to fly out for an emergency business meeting. I'd be gone until Friday. She tried to hide her excitement, but I could hear it in her voice as she offered to hold down the fort while I was away. That same day, I sent an anonymous tip to Elena's company's ethics hotline, complete with documentation of her information, sharing and after-hours use of company resources for personal matters. I didn't mention the affair. I didn't need to. The evidence of her professional misconduct was damning enough. I also forwarded David's falsified expense reports to Uncle Vin, along with copies of credit card statements showing charges to the hotel where he and Alina met. Again, no mention of the affair. Just the facts about financial irregularities. Then, I checked into the same hotel where Alina and David had been meeting for months. I'd booked the room directly above their usual suite, and I waited. They arrived that Tuesday evening, just as I'd expected. I could hear them through the thin walls. Alina's laughter, David's voice, the sound of champagne glasses clinking. They were celebrating something, though I couldn't make out what. Around midnight. When things had quieted down, I made one final move. I called the hotel's front desk from my room phone. "Hi, this is room 412, I said. "I'm having trouble sleeping because of some noise from the room below me. It sounds like they're having a party or something. Could you possibly ask them to keep it down?" "Of course, sir. We'll send someone up right away." 20 minutes later, I heard a knock on Alina and David's door, followed by muffled voices in the hallway. Hotel security had arrived to investigate a noise complaint. Standard procedure required them to verify the identities of everyone in the room and document the incident. What Alina and David didn't know was that the hotel had a strict policy about guests who weren't registered occupants. Elena's name wasn't on the room registration, only David's. When security asked for her ID and discovered she lived at my address, they were required to file an incident report, which would be forwarded to the hotel's corporate office for review of potential policy violations. But that was just the appetizer. Wednesday morning brought the main course. Elena's phone started ringing at 7 a.m. Margaret wanted to see her in the office immediately. regarding some irregularities that had been brought to the company's attention. Alina called me in a panic, but I'll let it go to voicemail. Meanwhile, David received a call from Uncle Vin, requesting an immediate meeting to discuss some discrepancies in his billing. David tried calling me, too, probably hoping I could put in a good word for him with my uncle. Those calls also went to voicemail. By Thursday evening, both of them were leaving me increasingly frantic messages. Alina had been suspended, pending a full investigation into her conduct. David had been dropped as a client and was facing potential legal action for fraudulent billing practices. They still didn't know that I knew about their affair. As far as they were concerned, their professional disasters were just incredibly bad timing. Friday afternoon, I returned to the apartment. Alina was there, pacing frantically in the living room. Her eyes were red from crying, her hair unwashed. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Thank God you're home," she said, rushing to hug me. "The most horrible things have been happening. My job, they're saying, I did things I never did. And David, he's been trying to reach you about some misunderstanding with your uncle." I held her while she cried against my chest, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. "Tell me everything," I said softly. She launched into a detailed explanation of her suspension, painting herself as the victim of a vindictive colleague who'd fabricated evidence against her. She mentioned David only in passing, heard about his troubles through mutual friends. "The worst part," she said, wiping her eyes, "is that they're saying I was sharing confidential information and using company resources inappropriately. They have all this documentation, but I swear I never did any of those things." "What kind of documentation?" I asked, still holding her. "Text messages, email logs, even hotel receipts. But I don't understand how they got them. It's like someone was watching me collecting evidence." "That does sound strange," I agreed. "Hotel receipts? What were those for?" She hesitated for just a moment, long enough for me to know she was about to lie again. "Work meetings. Sometimes I had to entertain clients outside the office, which clients, another hesitation, just ... various ones. You know how it is." I pulled back to look at her face, studying the way she avoided my eyes. "Alina, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Where were you last Tuesday night when I was out of town?" The question caught her off guard. I could see her mind racing. To remember what lie she'd told me, I went to dinner with my sister. "Why? Which sister?" "Jessica. We went to that new Italian place downtown." I nodded slowly. "That's interesting. I called Jessica yesterday to ask if she wanted to join us for dinner this weekend. She said she hadn't seen you in months." The color drained from Elena's face. We ... Maybe she forgot. We've both been so busy ... "Alina," I said quietly, "I need you to be honest with me. Are you having an affair?" The words hung in the air between us. I watched her face cycle through shock, denial, anger, and finally, resignation. "How long have you known?" she whispered. 3 months. She stared at me in disbelief. 3 months, and you didn't say anything. "I was waiting to see if you'd tell me yourself." "Who is it?" she asked, as if there were multiple possibilities. "You? Tell me." Elena sat down heavily on the couch, her hands shaking. "It's David. It started last year, after that conference in Miami. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but then ... but then it did." She nodded, tears flowing freely now. "I never meant for it to happen. I love you, but I love him too. I was going to tell you, I just didn't know how. When what? When were you going to tell me? After you'd figured out how to leave me for him? After you'd lined up another job? After you'd finished using my connections to advance your career?" The accusations hit her like physical blows. "That's not never. Alina, I know about the client information you shared with David. I know about the expense reports. He falsified using money meant for dates with you. I know about the hotel room you've been meeting in every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 8 months. She stared at me in horror. "You had me followed. I didn't need to. You and David were so careless, so confident that I'd never figure it out. You left digital trails everywhere." The full realization was dawning on her now. "The investigation at work, David's problems with your uncle, ... That was you, I corrected. "I just made sure the right people saw the evidence of what you'd already done." Elena's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and her face went even paler. "David?" I asked. She nodded. What does he want? He wants to meet, he says. He has something important to tell me. I smiled for the first time in days. You should go. She looked at me suspiciously. You want me to go? I think you two have a lot to discuss. An hour later, Alina left to meet David at a coffee shop across town. I knew she wouldn't be coming back to the apartment that night, or any night after that. I'd already packed her belongings into boxes and stacked them neatly by the front door. But first, I had one more call to make. David's phone rang 4 times before he answered. Hello. His voice sounded strained, exhausted. Hey, buddy, it's me. I just got back from my trip and heard you'd been trying to reach me. Jesus, finally. Listen, I need to talk to you about what happened with your uncle. There's been some kind of misunderstanding, and I think someone's been spreading lies about me. What kind of lies? About my billing? About my expenses? Someone's been telling him I'm not trustworthy, that I have integrity issues. You know me, man. You know I'd never do anything dishonest. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Of course not. Who would say something like that about you? I don't know. But I think it might be connected to what's happening with Alina. Someone's been targeting both of us, trying to destroy our careers. It's too much of a coincidence. What's happening with Alina? She got suspended from her job. They're saying she was sharing confidential information and using company resources inappropriately. It's complete bullshit, but they have all this evidence somehow. That's terrible. You two must be really stressed. Actually, that's something else I need to talk to you about. Alina and we need to tell you something. Something important. Oh, David took a deep breath. We're in love. It happened gradually, and we never meant for it to happen, but we can't deny it anymore. I know this is going to hurt you, and I'm sorry. You're my best friend, and the last thing I ever wanted was to hurt you. I let the silence stretch for a long moment. How long? How long what? How long have you been sleeping with my girlfriend? Another long pause. You know, I've known for months. Months, his voice cracked. And you didn't say anything? I was curious to see how far you'd both go. How many lies you'd tell, how much you'd deceive someone you claim to care about. Listen, I know you're angry, but I'm not angry, David. I'm impressed. The level of deception, the casual cruelty, the complete lack of conscience. It's actually quite remarkable. That's not fair. We never meant for anyone to get hurt, really. Then why didn't you break up with me first, Alina? Why didn't you end our friendship before pursuing her? David, you both had opportunities to do the right thing, but you chose deception instead. Because we were scared. Because we didn't want to lose you, but you were perfectly willing to betray me. David was quiet for a moment. So what happens now? Now, you get exactly what you wanted, each other. But you'll have to figure out how to build a life together without jobs, without references, without the network of people who used to trust you. You destroyed our careers over a relationship issue. I didn't destroy anything. I simply made sure that your professional misconduct came to light. Alina sharing confidential information, you falsifying expense reports. Those were your choices. Not mine, but you orchestrated it. You manipulated the situation. I revealed the truth. There's a difference. Another long silence. So, this is it. 4 years of friendship, and this is how it ends. No, David. This is how you ended it 8 months ago, when you decided my girlfriend was more important than our friendship. I'm just making it official. I hung up and turned off my phone. An hour later, I heard Elena's key in the lock. She came in quietly, probably expecting to find me asleep. Instead, I was sitting in the living room reading. We need to talk, she said. I think we've said everything that needs to be said. Please, just hear me out. I set down my book and looked at her 5 minutes. She sat on the edge of the couch, as far from me as possible. David and we want to be together. We're going to try to make it work. Congratulations. But we both feel terrible about how this happened. We want to make it right somehow. Do you propose to do that? We want to be honest with everyone. Tell our friends and families the truth about what happened. Accept responsibility for our actions. That's very noble of you. We also want to help you through this transition. David has some money saved up, and I can contribute to the rent until you find a roommate or decide to move. I almost laughed. Alina, neither of you has a job anymore. What money are you talking about? Her face fell. We'll figure something out. We'll find new jobs. With what references? Who's going to hire someone who is suspended for sharing confidential information? Who's going to trust a consultant who falsifies expense reports? Those things aren't true. They're completely true. You just never thought you'd get caught. Alina started crying again. So that's it. You're going to ruin our lives over this. I'm not ruining anything. You two built this situation yourselves, brick by brick, lie by lie. I just made sure there were consequences for your actions, but we love each other. I'm sure you do. And now you get to find out how strong that love is when it's tested by real adversity, instead of the thrill of sneaking around. She stared at me for a long moment. You've changed. You're not the man I fell in love with. You're right. The man you fell in love with was naive enough to trust people who didn't deserve it. The man you're looking at now has learned from his mistakes. Alina stood up slowly. I'll come back tomorrow for my things. There by the door. She turned to look and saw the boxers I'd packed. You already, ... How did you, ... I've had 3 months to prepare for this conversation. Alina, did you really think I'd be caught off guard? She picked up one of the boxes, then set it down again. I can't carry all of these myself. Call David. I'm sure he'll be happy to help. After she left, I poured myself a glass of the wine I'd bought in Chicago and sat on my balcony overlooking the city. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I smiled and deleted the message without responding. It was over, moreover, than they knew. The next morning, I called Margaret at Elena's former company. I wanted to thank you for handling that situation so professionally, I told her. I know it couldn't have been easy. Actually, I should thank you. If you hadn't mentioned your concerns, we might never have looked into Elena's activities. We discovered she'd been sharing information with at least 3 different outside parties, not just this David person. 3 different parties. Apparently, she was playing several angles, trying to position herself for a better job elsewhere. The confidential client data she shared could have cost us millions in lost contracts. I had no idea it was that extensive. Neither did we. We're considering pressing charges. That afternoon, Uncle then called. I wanted to update you on that David situation, he said. After we dug deeper into his billing, we found evidence of fraud going back almost a year. We're turning everything over to the authorities. I'm sorry to hear that. I feel responsible for recommending him in the first place. Don't blame yourself. Criminals are good at hiding their true nature. The important thing is that we caught it before he could do more damage. That evening, I received a call from Elena's sister Jessica. I heard what happened, she said. Alina called me crying, saying, you'd somehow orchestrated her losing her job. Is that what she told you? She said you found out about her affair and decided to get revenge by sabotaging her career. What do you think about that? Jessica was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I think Elena's finally facing consequences for her actions. She's been selfish and manipulative her whole life, but people always gave her a pass because she's beautiful and charming. That's a harsh assessment. Of your own sister, it's an honest one. I love Alina, but I'm not blind to her faults. What she did to you was wrong, and I'm glad someone finally held her accountable. 6 months later, I ran into David at a coffee shop downtown. He looked terrible, thinner, poorly dressed, with the haunted expression of someone whose life had fallen apart. He saw me before I could leave and walked over to my table. Can we talk? He asked. I gestured to the empty chair across from me. You look like hell. I feel like hell. He sat down heavily. I've been blacklisted from every consulting firm in the city. No one will touch me after what happened with your uncle. That's unfortunate. Alina and we broke up last month. Sorry to hear that, are you really? He studied my face. Because I think you knew this would happen. I think you knew that without jobs, without money, without any stability, our relationship wouldn't survive. I knew you'd have challenges. You destroyed us. You destroyed yourselves. I just made sure the destruction was complete. David leaned forward. Do you feel better now? Now that you've gotten your revenge? I considered the question seriously. You know what I feel. Relief. Relief that I learned who you really were before I made the mistake of trusting you with something truly important. Relief that I discovered Elena's true character before I married her. We make a mistake. People make mistakes. Sleeping with someone once is a mistake. Carrying on a secret affair for 8 months while lying to everyone around you. That's a choice. A series of choices. So there's no forgiveness, no possibility of redemption. Forgiveness is between you and God, David, but forgiveness doesn't mean there shouldn't be consequences. He stared at me for a long moment. You've become someone I don't recognize. Good. The person you used to know was too trusting, too forgiving. He let people walk all over him because he believed everyone shared his moral code. And now, I know better. David left without saying goodbye. I finished my coffee and walked home to the apartment I no longer shared with anyone. It was quiet, peaceful mine. A year later, I was promoted to senior partner at my firm. The same week, I received an invitation to Elena's wedding. She was marrying someone I'd never met, someone she'd apparently started dating just 3 months. After our breakup, the invitation included a handwritten note. I hope you can find it in your heart to wish me well. I threw the invitation away without responding. 2 years after that, I met Amanda at a colleague's dinner party. She was intelligent, funny, and most importantly, honest. When I told her about Alina and David, she listened without judgment, but also without excessive sympathy. Some people think loyalty is old-fashioned, she said. They think everyone's disposable, that you can just trade people in when someone better comes along. But loyalty is what separates civilization from chaos. We were married 8 months later. Alina sent a wedding gift, a silver picture frame with another handwritten note. Congratulations. I hope you'll be happier with her than you were with me. Amanda found the note when we were opening gifts. Who's this from? She asked. Someone I used to know, I said, and threw the note away, but I kept the picture frame. We used it to display a photo from our honeymoon in Italy, Amanda and I laughing at some joke, I can't remember, looking genuinely happy in a way I never looked. In any photo with Alina, sometimes I wonder what happened to David. Elena's social media suggests she's moved on completely, posting pictures of her new life with her new husband. But David seems to have disappeared entirely from our mutual friends' lives. I could probably find out if I wanted to, but I don't want to. That chapter of my life is closed, and I have no interest in reopening it. People sometimes ask if I regret how I handled the situation. If I think I went too far, if I should have just confronted them directly instead of orchestrating their downfall. My answer is always the same. They made their choices, and I made mine. They chose deception, betrayal, and selfishness. I chose truth, consequences, and justice. The difference is that I can sleep peacefully at night. Alina and David got exactly what they deserved, each other, and all the chaos that came with it. They wanted to be together so badly they were willing to lie, cheat, and steal for it. Now they know what that kind of love actually costs, and I know what real love looks like, the kind Amanda and I share. Built on honesty, respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. The kind of love that doesn't require destroying other people to exist. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destruction. Sometimes, it's simply living well while watching karma do its work. Sometimes, it's knowing that, while they're still dealing with the consequences of their choices, you've moved on to something infinitely better. Sometimes the last laugh is the sweetest sound of all.